The night air in the small town of Havenwood always carried a peculiar stillness, a quiet so profound it felt like a held breath. For Liam, a freelance graphic designer who'd sought refuge from the city's clamor in a rented cottage on the outskirts, this stillness had initially been a balm. But lately it had taken on a more unsettling quality, especially after dusk. It started subtly, a feeling of being watched, a fleeting shadow at the edge of his vision that vanished when he turned to look. He dismissed it as the usual urban dweller's paranoia, the overactive imagination of someone unused to the deep, enveloping darkness of the countryside. His cottage, nestled amongst ancient oaks whose branches clawed at the sky like skeletal fingers, was an old structure, prone to the creaks and groans of settling timber. He'd attributed the whispers he sometimes thought he heard to the wind whistling through unseen cracks, the rustling of leaves against the window panes. But then the dreams began. They were always the same, yet subtly different each time. He'd find himself standing in a vast, echoing cavern, the air thick with a damp, earthy scent that clung to his throat. Strange bioluminescent fungi pulsed with a faint, sickly green light, casting long, distorted shadows that writhed and danced. In the center of the cavern, a colossal, amorphous shape would begin to stir. It wasn't a solid form, but rather a shifting mass of dark, viscous fluid interspersed with what looked like countless, unblinking eyes, each a different, unsettling hue. They would swivel towards him, a silent, collective gaze that sent a shiver down his spine, not of fear, but of a profound, existential dread. He could never move, could never scream. He would just stand there, paralyzed, as the shape seemed to inhale, drawing the very air from the cavern, and with it a piece of his sanity. He'd wake up in a cold sweat, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird, the eerie green glow of the fungi still imprinted on his retinas. Liam tried to rationalize it, stress from his work perhaps, too much caffeine. He even considered that the old cottage might have some sort of ambient energy that was affecting his sleep. He started keeping a journal, detailing the dreams, hoping to find a pattern, a clue, anything to break the cycle. He'd wake up feeling drained, the phantom weight of the dream lingering long after he'd splashed cold water on his face. The feeling of being watched intensified. During the day, he'd catch glimpses of movement in the periphery of his vision, a fleeting darkness beneath the ancient oaks, a ripple in the still surface of the pond at the edge of his property. He'd go to investigate, his footsteps crunching on the gravel path, only to find nothing. The silence would rush back in, heavier and more oppressive than before. He started leaving lights on in the cottage, even during the day, a futile attempt to ward off the encroaching shadows. One afternoon, while researching local history for inspiration for his design projects, he stumbled upon an old leather-bound book in the town's dusty archives. The title, barely legible, read, "Whispers from the Underside." He spent hours poring over its brittle pages, filled with cryptic accounts of Havenwood's founding, tales of unusual occurrences, and local folklore. He found a recurring motif, a legend of a primordial entity that resided deep beneath the earth, a creature of pure subconscious energy, capable of manifesting in the dreams of those who were susceptible. The book described it as the Dream Weaver, a being that fed on fear and doubt, twisting the deepest anxieties of its victims into monstrous forms. It spoke of individuals who had been driven to madness by its influence, their minds irrevocably broken by the nightmares it conjured. The description of the creature in the dreams, with its shifting form and myriad eyes, sent a chill through Liam that had nothing to do with the damp archive air. It was as if the book was describing his own nightly torment. That night, the dream was more vivid than ever. The cavern seemed to expand, the green glow intensifying, pulsing with a life of its own. The amorphous shape in the center was closer, its countless eyes now fixed on him with an unnerving intelligence. He could feel its awareness, its insatiable hunger. He could almost hear a low, guttural hum emanating from it, a sound that vibrated in his very bones. He tried to fight it, to force himself to move, to run, but his limbs were leaden. The shape began to extend a pseudopod, a dark tendril that slithered through the cavern floor, inching towards him. It was then that he noticed something else, something that made his blood run cold. Scattered amongst the bioluminescent fungi were remnants, fragments of his own life. A half-finished sketch pad, a forgotten coffee mug, a crumpled letter from his estranged sister. These were not random objects. They were symbols of his regrets, his unfulfilled ambitions, his deepest insecurities. The Dreamweaver wasn't just conjuring a monster. It was feeding on the very essence of his being, on the parts of himself he tried to bury. He woke up with a gasp, the images seared into his mind. The tendril, the eyes, the scattered fragments of his life. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that this was no mere nightmare. He was being targeted, his mind being preyed upon. He felt a desperate urge to flee, to escape Havenwood and its suffocating stillness. But a part of him, a morbid curiosity born from the depths of his fear, compelled him to stay, to understand. He spent the next few days in a state of heightened anxiety, jumpy at every shadow, every creak of the cottage. He avoided sleep, surviving on sheer willpower and copious amounts of caffeine. He felt like a hunted animal, his senses on high alert, but with no predator in sight, only the unseen terror that lurked in the darkness of his own mind. He started to see connections everywhere. The unsettling stillness of Havenwood, the whispers he dismissed as wind, the ancient oaks that seemed to watch him. They all felt like extensions of the creature in his dreams. He revisited the book, rereading the passages about the Dreamweaver. It mentioned that the entity was particularly drawn to individuals grappling with inner turmoil, those who carried a heavy burden of guilt or regret. Liam thought about his past, the mistakes he'd made, the relationships he'd let wither. He realized that he had indeed been running from himself, from the parts of his life he found difficult to face. The Dreamweaver, it seemed, had found a way to breach the walls he'd built around his subconscious. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long skeletal shadows across the landscape, Liam decided he couldn't endure the fear any longer. He had to confront it. He went down to the cottage's old musty cellar, a place he usually avoided. The air was heavy and cold, carrying the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet. Armed with a flashlight, he began to explore, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He noticed strange, almost organic markings etched into the stone walls, patterns that seemed to writhe and shift in the beam of his flashlight. As he ventured deeper, the markings became more intricate, forming swirling vortexes and countless repeating eye-like shapes. He felt a prickling sensation on his skin, a growing unease that threatened to overwhelm him. He found himself drawn to a particular section of the wall, where the markings were most concentrated. As he shined his flashlight on them, the stone seemed to shimmer, to become less solid, almost fluid. He reached out, his fingers trembling, and touched the wall. It felt strangely yielding, like dense, cold flesh. He pulled his hand back, a wave of nausea washing over him. He then noticed a small, almost imperceptible crack in the stone. Curiosity, or perhaps a desperate need to understand, drove him to investigate further. He managed to pry open the crack, revealing a dark void beyond. A faint, sickly green light, eerily familiar, seeped from the opening. He peered into the void, and for a fleeting moment, he saw it. Not the full manifestation, but a glimpse. A swirling mass of dark fluid, punctuated by a multitude of unblinking eyes, their colors shifting and swirling like a cosmic kaleidoscope. The air grew heavy, and he felt a pressure in his head as if something was trying to force its way in. Panic seized him. This was not a dream. This was real. The dream weaver was not just in his mind. It was in the very foundations of his being, a parasitic entity that fed on his deepest fears and regrets, and it was now attempting to break through into the physical world. He slammed the stone back into place, his hands shaking violently. He scrambled out of the cellar, gasping for breath, the oppressive weight of the entity's presence still clinging to him. He understood now. The cottage, the ancient oaks, the stillness of Havenwood, they were all conduits, anchors for this ancient, terrifying entity. His own latent anxieties and unacknowledged fears had made him a perfect host, a gateway. He knew he couldn't stay. He had to leave, to escape this place before the dream weaver consumed him entirely. He packed a few essentials with frantic haste, his mind racing. As he hurried to his car, he saw them, subtle yet undeniably present, faint outlines of the amorphous shape, shimmering at the edges of his vision, coalescing in the deepening twilight. The eyes, countless and unnerving, seemed to peer at him from the shadows of the trees, from the darkened windows of the deserted cottages, from the very air around him. The stillness of Havenwood was no longer just quiet. It was a predatory silence, a prelude to the ultimate horror. He started the car, the engine's roar a desperate defiance against the encroaching dread. As he drove away, the cottage and the ancient oaks receded into the darkness, but he knew the feeling wouldn't leave him. The dream weaver was not confined to Havenwood, or even to his dreams. It was a manifestation of the hidden darkness within himself, and it had tasted his fear. He had escaped Havenwood, but he was not sure he had truly escaped the creature. The eyes, he felt, were still watching, waiting, from the deepest recesses of his own mind, ready to reawaken when the stillness returned, when he least expected it. The journey ahead was not about running from a place, but from the haunting echoes of his own psyche, from the monstrous truths that his subconscious had been hiding all along, now finally revealed and terrifyingly real. The night air, even miles away, still seemed to carry that peculiar stillness, a reminder that some nightmares, once awakened, never truly end. They simply lie dormant, waiting for the opportune moment to manifest, to consume, to forever haunt the waking world with the spectral horrors born from the deepest, darkest corners of the human mind.